Good afternoon. Hi, folks. I say afternoon as I'm naively assuming you're all in my part of the world, which may not be the case. So if I've got that wrong, I'm sure we'll find out very shortly. Folks, we'll kick off with some introductions. In case there's anybody here that doesn't know me, I'm Andy Agathangelo. My day job, as it were, is as the founder of the Certified Social Enterprise, which is called Transparency Task Force. I'm also involved with running an all-party parliamentary group on investment fraud and fairer financial services, and I keep myself pretty busy on all kinds of campaigning activity in this financial services space. We're recording the session. Today's meeting is going to be different to what we've normally been doing, so I'm going to briefly explain the idea. Of course, there are 30,000-ish fellows around the world, and there will be folks who are interested in what we're going to be discussing, but can't be here today, for example, because it's not in the time zone. But the idea of recording the meeting means we can make it available for others to access in due course. So please be mindful that what we're going to be discussing is going to be out there via Circle, via the RSA's various channels, and hopefully it'll attract more people to our network and create an even better quality conversation. We'll go around and give each of you a chance to introduce yourselves, and then I'm going to talk about something that's becoming increasingly front of mind for me, which is the Mansion House speech on the 14th of November. To my mind, it poses a question for us, which is perhaps there's something that the RSA and our network could and should do to invite the Chancellor and our Treasury colleagues to consider the sorts of issues that matter to us. We'll go in the order of we'll go ladies first, if that makes sense. We'll go to Sarah first of all, and then to Ismail, and then to Paul. Please, for the moment, just introduce yourself. Sarah, thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Take yourself
Thank,
off mute. Lovely. Thank you.
thank you, Andy. Good afternoon, everyone. Sarah Elizabeth Dill. I'm an attorney based in London, also serving as the Vice Chair of the International Bar Association's War Crimes Committee.
Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. And I remember you from before. Lovely to have you back with us. Thank you. Ismail, over to yourself.
Hi, everyone. Consultant in AI ethics and research governance, and also the founder of the Responsible AI Network at the RSA. Calling from Nova Scotia, Canada. Happy to be here.
Is that a holiday? Are you doing some business over there, Ismail?
I've been here for a year, so it's
Wow.
either a holiday gone very wrong or a very good business. I don't know which one.
Okay. And Nova Scotia makes me think of those very cold, snowy winters. That's the place for cold, snowy winters, isn't it? Yeah.
We got a lot of snow last winter, yes.
Okay. Well, hope you're keeping yourself nice and warm as you approach your winter. Let's go to Paul. Paul, please do take a moment to introduce yourself. Thank you. And then we'll go to Gabenga. If I've mispronounced your name, Gabenga, my apologies. I'm sure you'll tell me what the right way to pronounce it is in a moment. Thank you. Paul, over to you.
Sorry, over to me.
No, I'd be inviting Paul to speak, but he's got to take himself off mute first. Thank you, Paul. He's introducing himself, and we'll get to yourself next, sir. Thank you. Paul, we can't hear you because you're on mute, so fix that for us, would you? Thank you. And then we'll go to Gabenga and then
Oh, sorry, got it now.
Jason.
I was hitting the wrong, not the world's best technological person. Yes, I'm joining the meeting from the Isle of Man, which is a crown dependency in the middle of the Irish Sea, next to the United Kingdom, but not part of it. I've been practicing as a lawyer here since 1987, and in my spare time, I write books on topics such as tax havens, the avoidance of beneficial ownership, fraud, and that sort of thing.
Paul, thank you very much indeed. And I think one of my colleagues has been liaising with you today because you do lots of things that are of interest to me, which I'll come back to shortly. Could you spell your surname for me, please? I'm not sure how many T's it's got.
Two. So it's Beckett.
Lovely. Thank you, Paul. Thank you very much. We're going to go to Gabenga, then to Jason, then to Wahmad 007. Gabenga, please introduce yourself and, of course, also tell us a bit about yourself and also where you are. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And good afternoon. Yes, my name is Benga Lawal. joining in from Benfleet in SS. And then of course I'm new, so to say. I'll consider myself new to the team and to the fellowship itself because I think I'm less than three. I mean, it's 3 or 4 months.
Okay.
But this likely going to be my first time joining this group for such a meeting. So I've been in my background has been in learning and development. I started off as a university teacher or lecturer you want. But since I've actually now started running a skills development and management organization, where we provide solutions to management, individual, personal growth and government, department. But we do that by facilitating training and then, of course, helping young people to also get their skills out there in terms of employability training, skills training, and then, of course, creating awareness. We organize conferences and workshops as well. So I'm
Great.
trying to be like Paul. If I can write, that would be great as well. I'm authoring a book soon, though, and I think maybe I should have spoken with him before the book is out. But let's see. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Benga. That's lovely. You've not mentioned financial services, so I presume that your interest in it is kind of more general. There's not a particular financial services issue that's of concern to you, or have I got that wrong?
You mean for me, financial services?
Yeah, yeah. Do you have a particular interest in the financial industry? What you've
Oh,
described?
yes,
Yeah,
yes. Oh,
please,
yes, yes.
please tell us more. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, thank you very much. Yes. I am also operating in that area, but not in terms of full-fledged, financial service. I was trained and I advise on financial services in terms of personal protection, company, business insurance, and all that. And my own advice and interest is in area of financial services has to do with protection, really. And that's where I'm limited on.
I understand. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Okay, lovely. We'll go to Jason, who I think we saw just now walking along somewhere by the looks of it. Hi, Jason. Nice to have you with us as always. We've got Kimberly joining us as well in a moment. Jason, please take yourself off mute and introduce yourself. Thank you. That's it.
Hi, yes.
So,
Working correctly. Somebody's changed on my phone. Hi, yes, I'm Jason. I'm in about. I live in London. I'm in Wimbledon. So my interests are, well, my background is sort of in IT and finance. I used to be a regulatory reporting manager for a large bank. Currently between roles, or looking for a new opportunity. So considering trying to pivot into something else and be a bit more purposeful. So that's where I'm at. So I left where I was working in the summer. I was on garden leave,
yes.
and now I'm sort of actively looking for my next stage really. So that's it. So reg reporting, IT. That's my background. Thank you.
Jason, thank you very much indeed, and it's good to have you back. I think you were here last time we spoke. Thanks, Jason. Thank you. We have Kimberly Artist. I'm not sure if Artist is the surname or the description. Kimberly, if you can hear us, please take yourself off mute and introduce yourself. We're just finishing off our round of introductions, Kimberly. And if you can't hear us and you can't take yourself off mute, we'll move on to the rest of our conversation. And you can passively listen in the background if you wish to. Let's do that. Kimberly, try to unmute yourself. You may not be familiar with Zoom, and of course that may be the case. Try to unmute yourself, and when you can, and when you do, oh, you've done it. Well done, Kimberly. Thank you. So please introduce yourself, and if possible, turn your camera on as well. That would be good, Kimberly.
Hello there. Good afternoon. I won't turn my camera on at the moment. I apologise. I am not just multitasking, but I've returned very jet lagged from my trip. So
Oh, okay. Okay.
So yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for passing on the invitation to the Zoom. I'm very happy to be here.
Welcome.
I'm a new fellow to the RSA, so I think I've been active for about 3 or 4 weeks now.
Okay.
And I am working currently as a designer setting up a sustainable luxury fashion brand.
Wow. Wow, 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 wow. Congratulations on what you do and best of luck with your new life as as an RSA fellow, Kimberly.
Thank you so
Please,
much.
please spell your surname for me, Kimberly.
So my artist name is Kimberly Artist, but I just go by Kim Judge. So it's KIMJUDGE.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much indeed. And we've
Thank you
got
so much.
one, you're very, very welcome. We've got one other person joining us, Stella. So here's Stella, who I think, if I remember rightly, we met last time. Stella's connecting to audio. Stella, you've just timed yourself beautifully to come in at the back end of our introduction. So, Stella, please take yourself off mute and briefly introduce yourself. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Sorry I'm late. Stella Okus is my name. I've been in banking for 30 years in Africa and last 5 in England. I set up a retail and private banking division of a Nigerian-owned bank in the City of London. I currently run a consulting practice linking businesses between Africa and the UK and raising capital for them. Happy to be here.
Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed, Stella. Thank you.
My
Look,
pleasure.
as I mentioned earlier, I'll repeat it for those that have come in late. The session is being recorded. I think you know that because you get an automated message as you join. The reason we're recording it is so that other fellows who can't be live with us can still access the conversation at some convenient time for them. It might be, for example, that they're on the other side of the world and it's currently in the middle of the night, etc., etc. We're going to talk about the Mansion House speech taking place on the 14th of November. Um, I think that might be an opportunity for us to do something quite useful, and we'll talk about that idea, and I'll explain the role I'd like you to have within that idea shortly. But just before we go there, I want to take a moment to basically remind people about a few kind of recent evolutions and developments as far as this particular network is concerned. I'm going to share my screen to help me to do that. So some of you will be aware that some months ago we had, I think, a couple of conversations about what the network's name should be. It was a really useful set of conversations because it gave us reason to really think about what is the purpose of the network, what is its purpose within the RSA. And having weighed it all up and having spoken to many, many people, what we decided to do was to change the name of the network. We've changed it from the RSA's Financial Services Network to the RSA's Responsible Finance for Good Network. And I'm going to talk about that name and I'm going to talk about why we've changed the name to that to hopefully enthuse you all about what we're trying to do. And I'm also going to make direct reference to the wording on this webpage, which I believe you can all now see. The flaw in the previous name, the original name, which always was a bit of a kind of working title until we'd collectively decided on something else. The flaw in it is it didn't really articulate what the underlying purpose of the network was. By calling it the Financial Services Network, it was pretty nondescript. It didn't really say much about what this was to do with. It didn't really try to articulate the fundamental values that were actually creating the causation of the network. Whereas responsible finance for good, we think, captures that narrative very well. We want the financial sector to be responsible. We want it to be an engine for good in the world. Of course, the word good's pretty general. We're talking here about things like people, planet, prosperity, so on and so forth. So we're not getting into any particular detail about what we mean by good, but we are making sure that anybody that wants to become a part of this network knows why we exist. As it says here, our Responsible Finance for Good network is a fellows-led initiative designed to bring together those within the global RSA community that want to engage with the active process of making change happen. And that's a point that I'll be coming back to in a little while. I'm going to put a link to this webpage, this newly updated wording of the webpage in the chat, so you can all take a look at it later on if you wanted to. You may, of course, have seen it quite recently, or you may be looking at it for the first time. But it's there in the chat if you want to take a look as I'm talking away. Does anybody have any questions in general terms about the network or what we're all about before I go on to discuss the Mansion House speech and the opportunity that I think exists within it? Anybody? I think we're all good. All right. I'll move on to the Mansion House speech. Is anybody here familiar with the Mansion House speech as a, if you like, as an annual institution? Does anybody know anything about it? I think Paul's, are you nodding your head, Paul? I think you might be. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we keep a close interest in our large neighbouring island. Let's put it that way.
Of course.
Because we realise we are entirely independent of the UK and its fiscal system and so on.
Right. And you're based in the Isle of Man, I think you said, didn't you? Yes, you are.
That's right.
Yes, you are. Okay. But folks on the Isle of Man have an interest in what's happening in the UK for pretty obvious reasons. Allow me to talk about the Mansion House speech. So this year it's taking place on the 14th of November. It's taking place at the Mansion House, which is right in the heart of the City of London. And it's going to be a particularly significant speech because it's going to be Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor of the Exchequer's first real opportunity to sketch out what she sees as the, if you like, the general direction of travel in terms of policy making. I'm going to draw your attention to a few articles. Again, what I'll do, just for your interest, I'll put the relevant the links to the relevant articles into the chat. And having done that, having kind of made sure everybody understands what the Mansion House speech is and why it's significant, I'm going to talk to you about the idea that we might want to embrace and do something about. Okay. So you're looking at here at a Thomson Reuters piece, October the 4th, and it basically describes precisely what we are thinking about and thinking of doing. I'll read it out in case the writing's too small for you to comfortably read it, okay? It says, British Finance Minister, interesting way of describing our Chancellor of the Exchequer, but anyway, British Finance Minister Rachel Reeves will deliver her first major speech to the financial and professional services industry on November 14, the government said on Friday. Known as the Mansion House speech, the annual address by the Finance Minister of the day is often used to sketch out future plans for the industry and is closely watched for clues on the government's next steps on issues like regulation. That's one article. I'm going to very quickly just copy the link to that in the chat so you can read it at your own leisure later if you want to do so. And I'm going to go to another piece. And I'll probably do this 3 times and then open up the conversation. The City UK, which is one of the major trade bodies, also has a piece about it. It poses the question: what will the Chancellor, the Right Honourable Rachel Reeves MP, reveal in her Mansion House speech? And the narrative is essentially similar to what you've just seen. It talks about the sorts of issues that are relevant, and it actually proposes. This gives you a clue to where my thoughts are going. It proposes a series of ideas that they being City UK, believe could be relevant to the membership, their community, their agenda. It talks about partnering with industry to create the conditions that will drive more investment into UK companies. It talks about it talks about boosting growth through investment and regulatory stability. It talks about delivering a coherent, stable, and predictable tax regime. It talks about empowering regions through devolution, and it talks about leading the net zero transition. It then goes on to invite people to read the full policy ideas for the Chancellor's Mansion House speech. I'm going to again put the link to this in the chat in case you want to refer to it. But I think I've already given you a clue about the idea I'm going to come on to. I'm going to go to one more. Of course, there are many more than this. You can search at your own time in your own leisure if you want to do so. I'm going to put a link to the third one, this Bloomberg piece, in the chat as well. I'll do that now before referring to what it says in the article. I'm just proving how frequently I accept things online without checking them first. I don't suppose I should really be doing that, but I'd do it anyway. Again, this is effectively a restatement of what the first article I showed you was, a chance for the Chancellor to set out her aims. The idea is very simple. The idea is very simple. Do you think we should invite Andy Haldane in his capacity as Chief Executive of the RSA, but of course also being somebody who was once upon a time quite a senior fellow with a small f in the Bank of England, to write to Chancellor Reeves ahead of the Mansion House speech, setting out very briefly what the RSA is and what the RSA believes ought to be things that she may want to be cognizant of when she's delivering her speech. Now, let's first of all go straight to the realities of this. All right. I'm 90% sure that it is unlikely that any letter that any organization sends the Chancellor ahead of the Mansion House speech is going to significantly influence what the Chancellor actually does and says on the day. I'm obviously not naive. I imagine that Labour Party policy in this space is probably already firmly set. However, if we were to do this, then it could achieve a few things. First of all, it could, and in some ways this is the key point, it could create it could create an opportunity for us as members of this network to give thought to what we would want that letter to say. In a moment, I'm going to be inviting us all to participate in an exercise where we would individually think about what we would like to see in that letter. For example, it might be that Ismail wants a few lines in there talking about responsible AI, for example, and the importance of it. And please, Chancellor, make sure that we don't end up with a disconnect between what society needs and what AI is going to deliver, or whatever the relevant phrasing would be that Ismail would come up with. It might be that Paul, who's obviously got a tremendous interest in the tax system and the impact of tax havens around the world, might want something in there that talks about the potential challenges that could arise through an arbitrage of some kind of through the tax system around the world, etc., etc. And what we could potentially do is invite all the members of the network to suggest the 1 or 2 or 3 lines that each of them would like to provide as a bullet point to be included in that letter. And then those that are happy to work with me on this as a little mini project over literally the next few days, could look for the duplications in those bullet points, rationalize them, harmonize, get the language right. So we end up with a pretty coherent message, ideally from Andy Haldane to the Chancellor of the Exchequer. So I think that by doing this, we give ourselves the opportunity of defining what matters to us, because we'd only want stuff in the letter that does matter to us by definition. And we would also create what may well be the first piece of direct correspondence between the RSA and the Chancellor of the Exchequer in the specific context of what the future architecture of UK of the UK's policy framework might be in this space. That, folks, is the idea. I'd love your thoughts on it. I'm very happy to, absorb any constructive criticism. So feel free to share whatever you genuinely think, the good, the bad, and the ugly. If you feel enthusiastic about it, let me know. If you think it's a rubbish idea, don't hesitate to let me know as well. Okay. We'll go in the reverse order. We'll go to, I think, Stella, then to Kimberly, then to Jason, then to Gabenga, then Paul, then Ismail, then Sarah, just to mix things up a little bit. Stella, could you please tell us what you generally think? And I'm going to write some notes in the chat, okay, and I'll come back to them later. just to make sure I capture the key points that people make. Stella, what are your thoughts about what I've just said? Thank you.
Perfect sense, Andy. I think I do agree with you that it's unlikely that whatever letter goes out from us or any other third party for that matter would change the narrative of what is going to be said on the 14th of November. But regardless, it is the right thing to do.
And if I were to say to you, tell me why you think it's the right thing to do, what would your response to that be?
I mean, from a moral standpoint, we really have no basis to complain if we didn't at least put our foot forward and make suggestions.
I like that.
Yeah,
I
and
like
if
that.
and even if they're not incorporated in the speech on the 14th of November, peradventure someone will get to read it. And through implementation, they could take in an idea or two. But at least we know we would have done the right thing in contributing as professionals. The Labour Party came in with a promise to boost economic growth in the United Kingdom, and from that, increasing foreign direct investment. It would be great to hear what specific plans they have to ensure UK is seen as a competitive location for businesses to locate their businesses here, including manufacturing, because we do know that that was once the case and is sadly not quite the same today. Because we can't speak about foreign direct. Why should they come to the UK and not go to Dubai or Singapore or China? What are the specific steps to be taken? It would be nice to know.
I generally I applaud everything you said, Stella. That's really, really coherent. I also like the point you made in particular that I hadn't thought of. We have no basis to complain if we don't take the opportunity to say what we want when we can. I like that. In fact, I think that's going to be perhaps that could be one of the opening paragraphs. We'd like to take the opportunity to because I like that, Stella. Thank you very much. Stella, anything else before we move on to Kimberly?
Nothing else from me. Thank you.
Okay.
Cheers.
Thank you, Stella. That's great input. Really great input. Kimberly, I appreciate absolutely that this topic, financial services, is not really your area of expertise. So don't worry if there's nothing that comes to mind. But equally, I'd be really, really interested in what you want to say. Thank you, Kimberly.
I don't have a background in finance, but I do have a background working within politics and working more specifically within regeneration and placemaking and cultural heritage. So I think I know and I have learned a lot from those experiences, and I equally share your initial sentiment to propose the letter. And I also share the sentiment with Stella that, to be honest, in short, if you don't ask, you don't get. And I think there is definitely some scope to perhaps consider the alignment with policies and their trajectories and the values of the reports from the RSA and the work that the fellows aim to do collectively and internationally. I think a lot of us have businesses or creative service / product-based businesses, and we are aligned in that sense. That's why we're all fellows. So I really do think that there could be something to come from it. It could open a discussion group going forward. You could, that there is, I agree. I'm here for it.
Lovely.
I wish I had time to contribute, but I've got some deadlines and I'm very sorry that I can't.
No worries, no worries. Feel free to turn your camera off and focus on your more pressing needs. But that's great input, Kimberly. I'm grateful for it.
I'm here. My ears are here. Thank you so much.
Okay, we'll have you even if it's just for your ears. Lovely, thank you. Jason's been zipping in and out. He's now I can see he's now at home. But Jason, you know the gist of it. What do you think of the idea, and anything in particular that you would like the letter to kind of touch on?
I think it's a brilliant idea. What I would say is I'd ask the question, what is valuable, and really get back down to the heart of it. I think it's a question they're asking themselves right now, whether they realize or not, in the sense of looking at how you're looking at spending and debt. Now, debt for just ordinary expenses is deemed obviously unacceptable if you're taking on additional debt. But if you're using it for investments, then they want to treat it differently. And that's something they are currently looking at, is how they can assess or change the rules to basically accommodate that. So borrowing for investment is okay, borrowing for spending is not. Well, that really gets to the fundamental, is like, what is valuable. So if you're, one unit of money can be seen as being good as an investment or as a waste. But I would go even further that, so expand on that and look at things like the triple bottom line in terms of, the classic example of, if you spend money cleaning up an oil spill, that would appear on GDP as positive, but obviously you've done a lot of environmental degradation. So how do we bring in the value of other things? So whether that's people, planet, etc., as well as profit needs to be there. And I think that also heads off. There's a big movement about degrowth and this argument that you can't grow forever. Now, not to get into that argument, but part of the problem with that is the only way we assess growth is by GDP. And that's a single metric, which has value because it's one that we can usually reduce things down to monetary terms, but it doesn't capture all those other nuances as well. Now, I think one of the challenges with that is it doesn't capture things like good spending versus bad spending. And that's something that I would look at. So what is valuable to society? And that's not, that's collectively. So that's right across the board in terms of, say, all those things in terms of businesses functioning as well as environmental degradation and resource use. And just to sort of close off, I can't remember the gentleman's name who came up with the concept of GDP, is back in the 40s or the 50s. And he described GDP, well, it could have been GNP at the time, but he described it and said, and don't use this to measure how good an economy is. And he actually, that wasn't, I'm showing you this as a way, but this is not the way to do it. And of course, it just took off and people accept it. So that's what I would do. I'll just literally ask the questions, what is valuable? And that would also tie in with the fact, well, clearly they're asking that question right now in terms of investment versus just normal expenditure with their so.
Wow, that's in just a few minutes you've provided such a rich set of thoughts here. Where you've taken the conversation, Jason, is, I guess, the very, very fundamentals here about what matters to us as a society, and the way that you've captured it by saying, yeah, but we could have huge amounts of GDP off the back of things like an oil spillage, for example. It really does take us to this notion of, are we counting what matters? Maybe we're not, and if we're not, no wonder we're in the mess we're in. Wonderful input, Jason. Thank you very much. I've caught the bare bones of what you said in the chat, and I'll type up some proper notes later. Okay, and what I'm going to do, folks, is I'm going to give everybody in the network a chance to contribute to this debate, and then, as I said, we'll go through the process of actually chunking it down to a coherent narrative without duplications. There's bound to be quite a bit of similar thinking. Thanks, Jason. Spot on, sir. Are they yellow braces you've got on there? Or is that a t-shirt? I'm just trying to work out what you're wearing.
Well, braces. It's cycling shorts. So
gotcha.
You get to that stage in life, you need something to hold them up.
Very good, very good. Thanks, Jason. Gabenga, over to you, sir. So, you know the routine here. What do you think of the idea, and what would you like to have included in the letter?
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for this opportunity. I think, well, I'm not sure anyone will want to say it's not a great idea. Not only that it's a very great idea, it's actually timing as well. It's a proactive measure of expression of, and of course, presenting a concern from a different perspective, or you see, my view is that when it comes to issue that boils on policy decision, and then of course national pronouncement, I think it's very important to lend a voice and then make some kind of contribution. Now, whether that is accepted or considered or not, I don't think that should be a concern for us. What must be what we should be concentrating on is to see how we can also make an impact, by contributing. And that's why the importance of that letter will be very good. What I think, in a very quick way to add to that, is that if the letter can also request for a kind of conversation rather than just words on paper, if there could be a possibility time frame where other conversation can be engaged, speaking to the content of the letter may perhaps also bring perspective to the whole concept that we try to project. So that would be my own.
Wow. Wow. So you're, if I've understood you correctly, Kubenga, don't hesitate to tell me if I haven't. You're suggesting the letter should actually initiate some ongoing dialogue between the RSA and the Treasury about what matters to us. Yeah?
Exactly.
So, okay. And through that process, we can start to influence. I get that. I get that. I get that. I've captured the very bare bones of it in the chat. Okay. I think I have anyway. Thanks, Kubenga. Spot on. Absolutely spot on, sir. We go to Mr. Paul Beckett. Paul, thoughts, please. Thank you.
Well, first of all, the first thing I'd written down on my notepad was invite a consultation. So that the letter is in fact, I know here we are, and we would like to continue discussions more fully, because as you said, the letter itself won't feature in the speech. I'd rather look, rather than, I mean, the Chancellor has a societal function as well, and as a socialist or social democrat, she's probably interested in two of the areas that I think you and I share an interest in, which is transparency and accountability.
Yeah.
And at the heart of transparency and accountability is regulation, the UK's fiscal regulation regime, but also its structural regulation regime. And I would invite her to look at the shortcomings in the UK's regulatory regimes generally.
Yeah.
A simple example for everybody on the call today is, for example, the UK companies registry, which is a catastrophe as far as accountability, transparency, working out who owns what. Why is who owns what important? It's because that's the way things are regulated.
Yeah.
We chase the owner. We don't, I mean, my books go into different areas, but I think opening a dialogue, there doesn't seem to have been a political will over the last 14 years to address this with any degree of seriousness. And this may be the opportunity, with a change of party and definitely a change of perspective, to emphasize the societal impact of evasion.
Okay. Okay. So this is again rich theme here we're mining. There are issues that haven't probably been considered. The societal impact of these things haven't been probably considered for as long as 14 years, and now it's an opportunity to probably reflect on the consequences of evasion. Can you help everybody understand, if you don't mind, Paul, without getting technical? I know you'll be able to articulate this without getting techie. Can you tell people why tax evasion, tax avoidance, escaping the tax man, whether it's at an individual level or at a kind of multinational level through tax havens, the sorts of things you know a lot about? Can you help us all understand why that's such a big problem for society?
It's more than tax evasion is the key. Tax haven is an anachronism now as a name. Anywhere can be a tax haven. It doesn't have to be a geographical location even. No, what this structurally over the past couple of decades, various mechanisms have been put in place worldwide which relieve people of accountability on all levels. So not simply tax, which is the most obvious and one of the most important, but these structures also relieve accountability for complying with judicial orders, accountability for complying with regulatory regimes.
Yeah.
So what I think, but there's been no political will in the UK, certainly for the last 14, well, perhaps a little longer, to focus on how within the United Kingdom, and never mind the Crown dependencies, how within the United Kingdom structures are deliberately being put in place, not only to facilitate tax evasion, which is, it's very easy. I mean, I'm not a tax lawyer, am I? I'm an offshore structuralist. It's rather like saying you're not a witch, you're an occultist, isn't it? It's the same sort of division. But if now Parliament could turn its attention to the sort of regulatory issues we've been dealing with in the Crown dependencies to keep ourselves squeaky clean for the last 25 years, that would be a good start. Because the reputation of the country is, if it doesn't have a reputation as a safe haven, if it doesn't, this is the United Kingdom, if it doesn't have a reputation for somewhere where your own business reputation won't be damaged by associating with others, then you're not going to attract the inward investment. Everywhere can offer tax incentives. It's respectability and probity that will tip the balance. And surely that's what the RSA for the last 250 years has been putting forward.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And is it your thoughts? This question may sound naive. Is it your thought that there are jurisdictions such as the Isle of Man that are better placed than the UK now in terms of demonstrating they're a safe place to do business in?
Yeah. I mentioned the Isle of Man because I'm calling you from the Isle of Man, but there are a number of, there are two ends of the scale. There are jurisdictions which are classic tax havens, and most of them are now within the United States of America. They're not in palm-fringed islands. They're not ex-British Empire territories. They're domestic in the United States. That will always have a market. But there are also investors who say, we want political stability, clarity, simplicity. We want direct access to government, and that they get in a smaller unit, a smaller society like Jersey, Guernsey, the Isle of Man, anywhere which is basically well regulated. And there's no reason why the United Kingdom shouldn't benefit on a much larger scale from that same level of confidence and attraction for that market. But it doesn't at the moment.
I understand. You spoke earlier, Paul, about the company registration process being poor in the UK. You're talking about companies' house deficiencies here, are you?
Yeah? It's the fact that, I mean, we could go into enormous detail, but just in the briefest sketch, it is struggling. There have been recent reform attempts, but it's struggling to identify who owns the companies, who's behind the companies. Companies were invented in the 1860s to provide a means whereby an individual would have limited liability and would therefore be encouraged to do business.
Yeah.
They were not invented to hide behind. But that is how, in the way of things, that is how they've evolved. And our own, I mean, all the offshore jurisdictions have enormous beneficial ownership declaration requirements annually reviewed and terrible penalties if you don't do it, and it goes on. Every industry, for example, in the Isle of Man, regardless of whether it's finance or not, is subject to this. They're called designated businesses.
Yeah.
The UK is no equivalent. If you want to form a company for someone else in the UK, go ahead. If you want to do that in the Isle of Man, you have to have a license from the government, which are following an investigation as to whether you're fit and proper. So without overloading this conversation on regulation, I think my contribution would be that we should have, the Chancellor should, as well as tax aspects and national insurance and social security aspects and government funding, she should also look at the underlying structure and how what she's trying to achieve can be subverted through lack of accountability. It's accountability rather than it's accountability avoidance or beneficial ownership avoidance, far more than pure tax and fiscal avoidance. That just comes along in its wake.
Paul, you've injected into this conversation years and years and years of thinking and writing, and I'm profiting from your rich expertise in this space.
Okay, I'm a Celt. I tend to talk too much. It's like Shrek. It's not that Donkey talks that's the trick. It's trying to get him to shut up.
You're reminding me of somebody I know. I'm thinking about myself here. Thanks very much indeed, Paul. That was absolutely great. I've tried to capture the bare bones just as an aid memoir in the chat there. Okay, thank you, Paul. That's so cool. What you're making me think here is, again, this is not how we would actually describe it, but we're basically saying if the chancellor wants to build a successful, thriving, flourishing economy with lots and lots of good growth, we need the foundations of those buildings to be rock solid. That cannot happen if we don't even know who owns the companies we actually that are causing that growth to happen. So be prepared to roll your sleeves up, Chancellor, and do some sorting out because Companies House, for example, is pretty damn naff. Beautifully said, sir. Thank you very much, Deepak. Ismail, I've got a feeling you're going to mention AI within the next 23 words. Go for it.
How can I not say AI? Okay, no. Okay, I
How
lost.
can I not?
Um,
That was six. That was six.
the so small. Yeah, I love the idea. It's great. My only challenge is acknowledging that no, it's probably not going to influence the speech itself,
Yeah.
but to make the letter more legible to the Chancellor, if
Yeah.
we speak to specific points that we read online about the potential speech, that we
Okay. Okay.
frame it in her own language, or at least what journalists are finding to be what is to come. So that's just a thought on my bit of contents, and again, assuming that there is space for it within that framing, within their framing, um, my question is, to what degree is the UK currently, I think not much, but to what degree can the UK come to have requirements for ESG reports that speak about the use of technology, the procurement processes of technology, the the links that so many businesses now have with technologists, which sometimes might be questionable. Um, Technologies are used in questionable ways. We have
Yeah.
Middle East to show up as the clearest example. But yeah, for me, it's what space does the use, deployment, and procurement of technology have in ESG reporting, again, to the questions of transparency and accountability? I find that particularly important.
And allow me to draw a little bit more wisdom from you, please, Ismail. Why do you find that particularly important?
Because right now we talk about, yes, remind again, Jason, for the triple bottom line,
Yeah.
we do not acknowledge at present the societal implications of technologies. So artificial intelligence, there you go. I did it after 23 words. Properly. Artificial intelligence has societal implications, so it can be used in wars or it can be simply used in ways that are discriminatory. They tend to work very poorly on Black people. They tend to work exceptionally well on white men. That's the simplest example. We have plenty of recruitment tools out there that can't read CVs written by women and so
Yeah.
on. Um,
Wow.
for me, it's a question of ESG reporting, at least for this network. I think that ESG reporting, looking to what can be shared within such a reporting mechanism,
Yeah.
uh, is where I think it might be more actionable. I'm always trying to look for cheeky ways to get into this financial services uh, madness of yours.
Yes, indeed. Indeed. And there's a lot of madness of mine there. I get this. Is there a parallel, do you think, Ismail, between what you just said and what Jason was saying earlier? Jason earlier was saying there's good spending, there's bad spending, there's good investment, and there's wasteful investment. Are you basically saying when it comes to tech, it could be tech for good, it could also be tech for bad? and at the moment there's no mechanism to report on that. Is that what you're saying?
That could be one way of saying it. I think
Yeah.
at present there's a lot of debate as to the parallel I saw with Jason was the currently AI is seen as a for growth thing. It's all about growing faster, improving productivity. And then there's
Right.
this whole degrowth movement, which says slow down, and think about sustainability and so on. Um, Acknowledging that the ESG process, even if it's just a small, I think what with all the big changes I would love to see in the world, if we aim for the low-hanging fruit and say, let's add a line to your ESG report about what tech you're using and why it's good tech, um, and that can be open to scrutiny. Um, at present, there's no
Yeah.
way of knowing.
Can I ask you a specific question, Ismail, before we go to Sarah? Is there any kind of ISO framework or similar that effectively acts as a descriptor of the good bad spectrum of tech?
Not that specifically. There are ISO frameworks, there are IEEE standards. Um, what I would say, I'll share this link and you can, if anyone's interested, it was a I loved it. It was a great speech by the chair of the Securities Exchange Commission in the US, and it was a fascinating argument for the need for transparency when it comes to ESG reporting,
Yeah.
to make sure that we're using tech for good, um, and not just
I
hiding
get
it
it.
under the rug.
I absolutely get it. Ismail, thank you very much indeed. Again, a very, very rich contribution indeed, as we often get from you, Ismail. Thanks for the link. I'll have a good look at that later. Folks, we're not going to go into politics because that would be wholly inappropriate, but just in case you haven't seen it, the news is James Cleverly's been knocked out of the Tory leadership race with Robert Jenrick and Kemi Badenoch going forward to members' vote. That's a bit of a shock result, isn't it? We won't talk about it. It wouldn't be appropriate, really, but I just thought I'd draw your attention to that because I do think that's a bit of a shock result. Meanwhile, far, far, far more importantly, let's go to Sarah for her thoughts on this. Sarah, what do you reckon of the idea and anything you'd like to have included in the letter, if we were to have one?
Yes, no, I mean, I echo the other comments that I think the letter is a great idea and a really good opportunity, I think, to see what other fellows want to get involved. So kudos, this is a fantastic project.
Great.
And as someone who used to work in policy and lobbying, I wish I could help, but I'm literally on a plane tomorrow to the Middle East for 10 days. And so the
Yeah.
timing, but if you want to include me on emails, and if I do have
Yeah.
some time, I'm happy to look and help with any framing or organizing if I have the bandwidth.
Yeah.
And the idea of requesting additional conversations and such, I think is fantastic, to keep that dialogue going, especially, if we're still looking at doing an event after the start of the year. So
Yeah.
strongly support all of those ideas. My two things are, one will come as no surprise to anyone who's been in these meetings before with me. As a certified global sanctions specialist, obviously I would love to see some really meaningful sanctions reform to kind of shift the compliance aspect so that it's not overly burdensome to financial institutions. Kimberly's comments made me realize, the small businesses that are implicated by this, entrepreneurs, as well as NGOs and humanitarian organizations.
Yeah.
Which then dovetails under, Paul's and Ismail's comments on accountability, which obviously as a lawyer, these are huge things. And obviously you need accountability and you need to reduce risk to attract investment and a robust economy. And, as Ismail started to touch on, I think that looking at the UN SDGs and the UN guiding principles and the human rights due diligence, especially with the passage of the law in the EU, that ensuring that government spending and or investment considers human rights aspects and that the government's conducting proper due diligence into the country or the company that they're doing business with or investing in.
I love this. I'm just capturing the notes here, Sarah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Is Middle East holiday or work? Just curious, is that holiday or work?
Really, in this day and age, I don't think anyone's going over there for a holiday, but no, it's work.
Okay, hi. Okay, I'm just capturing the last thing you said. And what we'll do, folks, in a moment is we'll go to any other business and we'll wrap up, okay? But I think it's been a great use of 55 minutes so far. Thank you very much. There's high standards of due diligence. Again, I've only captured the bare bones as an aid memoir to me, Sarah, okay? So it's not an essay of rule due diligence. Fantastic. Okay, we'll go to any other business. It's 4 minutes to four. We've got a few minutes if anybody has anything. Would anybody like to raise anything that somehow relates to the general theme of responsible finance for good? It doesn't have to be anything, but I'm giving everybody the chance to share anything that might be front of mind for them. Anything?
Can I just mention a link you may be interested in? It just occurs to me.
Yeah, please do.
There's an organization run by Lynn Forrester de Rothschild called the Council for Inclusive Capitalism.
I went to, you know what, it's remarkable you mentioned that. I went to one of her events in Mansion House about a few years ago, and it was one of those inclusive capitalism. There was a different phrase she was using, a different phrase, but I know exactly what you're saying. Please do carry on. I interrupted you.
No, it's just that strength in numbers, and they have a. I mean, I joined. I'm not sure what my status is with them now because they're mostly organisations rather than individuals. But she and I were talking at the very beginning, and we had a common interest in. I'd just written a book on labour rights in the Catholic Church, and she'd just come from a meeting with the Pope. And then she delicately explained to me, "Did you know I was Jewish?" I said, "Yes, I had a clue, Lady Rothschild." But
Yeah.
they have such connections and such research facilities, and it's entirely compatible with the conversation that we've had today.
Right.
But rather than struggle on our own, if there's somebody who could just give a helping hand outside the RSA, it would be worth reaching out to them.
I absolutely love that line of thought. I really do. I really, really do. You're posing the wonderful question, are there others who also care about this stuff that we could somehow collaborate with, partner with, align with, associate with? I absolutely love that. Thank you so much, Paul. Thank you. Kimberly's got her digital hand up. It's her right hand. Not that her left hand would make a difference, but I just noticed it's her right hand. Kimberly.
Hello.
There it is, literally.
I really share those sentiments, and I do think that this could potentially be it could form a research paper in some capacity. So a letter leads to a discussion / consortium, which then leads to networking, and that follows on to potential research paper.
Okay. I've got to capture this really quickly before we wrap up. Bear with me, folks. I'm just writing up a note from what Kimberly just said. Kimberly, could be basis. You know what, Kimberly? What if we were to pick up on what you just said and literally did a bit of work on a kind of co-created basis, everybody doing a little bit, if people want to do a little bit, to find out which other NGOs, civil society groups, etc., in general terms felt the same way that we do. We could then define that cohort and become a joiner-upper of that community. Love that. Joined up research and collaboration with NGOs on our wavelength with same vibe as us. You know what I mean by vibe. Ignore all the typos and spelling mistakes and just rushing it down. Wonderful, Kimberly. Absolutely wonderful, Kimberly. Does anybody have anything else? I think we're done. I don't think we could possibly squeeze more than we did in that time. Ismail's itching to say something.
And in not related, can I share links to the events we have at RSA House? It's not the...
Please do.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely, please do. And similarly, but folks, if any of you've got any links to anything you're doing, then let us know. For example, on Tuesday night, you're all welcome to come to the one I'm about to put in the chat. It's an event to do with World Values Day, and we're talking about the values in financial services. If I had actually planned to mention that, and let's have a look at yours as well.
And our two events, one on Halloween at RSA House, also online, one on
Scary.
13th of November, about AI, intelligence, and yeah, it'll be fun. We'll see. I'll be there in person. I'll be traveling to England for a month.
Yeah. You know what? Sometimes getting the name of something right is really valuable. I love your reign, the responsible AI network. I love that. That's cool. Um, I really like that. Folks, please do copy these links if you want to refer to them later. Please do. Thanks, Ismail, for mentioning that. Please do copy the one I'm running on Tuesday night about values. That's part of the World Values Day. The idea is basically there's one day a year everyone thinks about the importance of values. I think it's pretty RSA-ish in its kind of vibe. Um, Great stuff, folks. Well, I feel the urge to applaud you all because you've all given me such wonderful feedback. So this is me applauding you. Thank you all very, very much indeed for your input today. It's been great. See you next time. In the meantime, wait for an email from me that will go out to everybody in the network saying, here's an outline of what we're planning to do. What do you think and what we'd like in the letter? And I'll meanwhile look to speak with Andy Haldane or his team to see if he'd be happy to kind of literally send a letter to Rachel Reeves ahead of the mention our speech. Cheerio all. Thank you very much indeed. That was great.